So today we're jumping into a really a pretty heavy conversation from the World Economic Forum in Davos.
hmm
We're looking at a talk with Palantir CEO Alex Karp, and it's not your usual AI discussion about efficiency.
Not at all.
He frames AI as basically a penetration test for our entire society,
Yeah.
like a stress test, but for everything.
And it's such a provocative way to start, isn't it? He's not interested in the hype. He's focused on how AI exposes what actually works versus what only, worked on a slide deck.
He calls it the PowerPoint enterprise.
Exactly. The company where the org chart looks perfect on a screen, but the actual workflow is a mess.
Yeah, that really hits home. We've all seen those organizations that look so clean in a presentation,
Yeah.
but it has zero relation to how work actually gets done.
Well, Karp's point is that AI is about to destroy that illusion.
Nice.
Because modern software has to work in the mud, not just in a clean boardroom. He uses the war in Ukraine as the ultimate reality check for this.
Right.
Western tech was historically built for these very clean, predictable environments where you have perfect Wi-Fi. But in Ukraine, you are operating in a world that is, in his words, rough, dirty, and disconnected.
Of course, because on a PowerPoint slide, you just draw a line and say the drone goes from point A to point B.
But in reality, the Russians are jamming your electronics, you have zero connectivity, and you have to synchronize data without getting your people hit by an artillery strike.
And I imagine you have to hide the data trail, so if the drone gets captured, they don't know who sent it.
That's a huge part of it. So if your software only works when the environment is polite, you lose. He calls this the load-bearing test. AI reveals the ground truth, and if your enterprise is a fiction, AI it'll expose that weakness immediately.
It seems like a stretch, but I can actually see the connection to the corporate world. A hospital, for instance.
It's a battlefield with different stakes.
Exactly. You have disconnected data, high pressure, lives on a line. The environment is just as dirty.
The stakes are incredibly high. And that brings us to the biggest technical hurdle, he points out, the ontology problem.
Okay, ontology, that's a heavy word. Let's break that down.
Think of it this way. A generic LLM, like the ones everyone is buying off the shelf, it's like a really charismatic improv actor.
Okay.
It can talk about anything, sounds super convincing, but it might just make stuff up if it doesn't know the answer. An ontology is the script. It's the stage directions. It's a rigid structure that forces the AI to stick to the facts and logic of that hospital.
So the improv actor can't just riff on a patient's diagnosis.
Absolutely not. And by forcing the AI to work inside this structure, Palantir is seeing hospital efficiency just skyrocket. We're talking up to 80% cost reduction in some areas.
Wow.
But here's the really interesting part. Karp argues the structure actually bolsters civil liberties.
That seems counterintuitive. Usually more data processing means less privacy.
It all comes down to the audit trail. So let's say a wealthy patient gets moved to the front of the line for a procedure. A generic improv AI might just hallucinate a fake medical reason to justify it. It basically launders the bias. But a structured system can't lie. The logs will show. Decision made because of donor status. It exposes the bias instead of hiding it.
That is market value honesty in its most brutal form.
It is.
And speaking of brutal honesty, Karp dropped a bit of a bomb on the labor market. He suggests that the, quote, philosophy majors from elite schools might be in trouble.
Yeah, he was very blunt about that. The idea is that a lot of traditional elite education is about subjective theory, learning how to argue a point in a seminar room.
Right.
But AI can simulate theory. What it can't do is handle the objective physical reality of actually implementing these complex systems.
He gave that great example of a former police officer with a junior college education who's now managing these high-end global targeting systems for the U.S. Army.
In the old economy, a resume filter just tosses that guy out. He doesn't have the pedigree. But in this new world, his aptitude, his grasp of operational reality, it makes him indispensable. It's a huge shift from credentialism to actual capability.
So the welder, the nurse, the technician, the people who actually touch the load we keep talking about, they win.
That's the trend. And he zooms this out all the way to the geopolitical level. He notes that the U.S. and China are figuring this out. They're adopting these technologies fast.
And Europe.
Europe, he warns, is facing a structural crisis. They're hesitating to adopt this stress test. And he basically says, If a society can't bear the load of this technology, it will collapse under its own inefficiency.
So it really sounds like the era of faking it is just coming to an end. AI is stripping away the ability to hide behind bureaucracy or a fancy degree.
Completely. Inefficiencies that used to be hidden by layers of middle management or old, clunky systems are now they're laid bare. It's a sobering reality check.
It really changes the question we should be asking ourselves, doesn't it? It's not, will AI take my job? Maybe we should be asking Karp's question. If AI reveals the true structural integrity of your skills, are you actually indispensable? Or have you just been surviving on the PowerPoint version of reality?